The Grand Council Hall floated above the red clouds of Zorath Prime, glowing with golden light. Hundreds of alien races filled the massive chamber, their eyes fixed on the center stage. It was a day of demonstration, a day when the so-called lesser species of Earth would stand before the galaxy's oldest empires. High above, banners of different civilizations hung from crystal towers, shimmering with symbols of power, pride and bloodlines that stretched across 1,000 stars. Among them, the small blue banner of Earth looked fragile, almost out of place. The Council's central figure, Lord Vorak of the Dominion, stood tall, his scaled armor shining under the bright lights. His long tail tapped the floor with every word, echoing through the hall. His voice was deep, full of mockery. "Humans," he began, dragging the word like an insult. "A species that fights its own kind for centuries and calls it strength. What lesson could they possibly teach the stars?" The hall filled with laughter, sharp, cold, and cruel. Dozens of alien ambassadors nodded in amusement. To them, Earth was a young world, a planet that had only recently joined the galactic community. And yet, one figure didn't move. Captain Elise Ward stood at the front of the human delegation, tall, calm, her uniform spotless black. Her eyes, sharp and steady, locked on Vorak's reptilian gaze. She didn't speak. She didn't flinch. When the laughter died down, she finally raised her head. Her voice was soft but steady. "You want to know what Earth has learned, Lord Vorak?" He sneered. "I do. Show me what your primitive planet has taught you, beyond chaos and destruction." The council chamber went quiet. Every alien leaned forward, waiting to see if this fragile creature would dare to answer such a challenge. Elise's lips curved into a small, dangerous smile. "Very well," she said. "You asked for a lesson. You'll get one." The next morning, the council arena was prepared. It was a vast circle of black stone surrounded by a shimmering barrier field. Thousands of alien spectators filled the stands, whispering in dozens of languages. Floating drones recorded every angle. This was history. And everyone wanted to see the humans fail. Lord Vorak arrived first. Surrounded by his personal guard, the Zarn elite, towering warriors with shining plasma armor. Their bodies glowed faintly with energy fields, their movements smooth and confident. When the humans arrived, the crowd fell silent for a moment. There were only 6 of them. No armor, no glowing weapons, no shields. Just plain uniforms, lightweight boots, and calm eyes. One alien general laughed. "Where is their army?" Another whispered, "They must be jesting." Elise walked to the center, meeting Vorak face to face. He looked down at her, twice her height, his teeth glinting. "This is your demonstration," he said. 6 fragile bodies against my soldiers? You truly do not understand the meaning of strength." Elise's eyes didn't move. "Strength," she said quietly, "isn't what you think it is." Vorak hissed in amusement and raised his hand. "Begin the test." The moment his hand dropped, the arena erupted. The Zarn soldiers charged, heavy footsteps shaking the ground. Their plasma weapons lit up the air with bright green light. The crowd cheered, certain it would be over in seconds, but then, splints, the humans moved. Not with panic, not with fear, but with calm precision. One ducked under a plasma blast. Another rolled forward, striking a weak point in the armor joint. Sparks flew. Every motion was smooth, sharp, and efficient, like water flowing through stone. Within 30 seconds, 2 of Vorak's soldiers were down. One's armor smoked. The other lay motionless, his weapon twisted from his hands. The laughter stopped. Vorak's eyes narrowed. He gestured for the rest to attack, harder this time. The humans didn't even draw weapons. They fought with pure instinct, dodging, striking, predicting movements before they happened. Elise stood back, watching, her hands folded behind her back. "Impressive reflexes," Vorak said, his voice hard now. She nodded slightly. "We learned that from necessity." "Necessity?" he asked. Elise turned her gaze toward him. "On Earth, every lesson is written in pain. Every mistake costs blood. We learned fast, or we died." Minutes passed. One by one, Vorak's elite soldiers fell. The arena floor was littered with shattered armor and burned metal. The crowd that once laughed now sat in stunned silence. Elise finally stepped forward. The last Zarn soldier charged at her, roaring. She didn't move until the very last moment. Then with a precise step, she sidestepped the attack. pressed her hand against the alien's chest, and with one swift motion, used his own momentum to slam him into the ground. He didn't rise again. The arena fell silent, the barrier lights dimmed. Elise stood in the center, surrounded by fallen warriors, her breathing calm, her expression unreadable. Lord Vorak clenched his fists. His pride trembled under the weight of the moment. He stepped forward, his voice low. "You were lucky." Elise met his eyes. "Luck," she said quietly, "is just another word for preparation meeting arrogance," the hall murmured. Even the alien dignitaries could feel something shifting, a weight of truth that was hard to deny. Elise turned to the council. "You wanted to see what Earth taught us," she said. "You've seen the surface. The lesson isn't over." As she walked out of the arena, Vorak watched her go, silent, furious, but uneasy. He had seen something in those human eyes, something he couldn't define, not hate, not even pride. It was something colder, something older, the look of a species that had faced extinction countless times, and survived every single one. He didn't know it yet, but the real lesson was just beginning. The sun over Zorath Prime burned like a cold white eye above the council. Arena, its light reflected off the shattered remains of Vorak's fallen soldiers from the first trial. The council had called for a second round to prove the first wasn't a trick or coincidence. Word had already spread across the stars. Every species that once mocked Earth now watched the broadcast, hungry to see if the humans' strange victory had been luck, or something far darker. Inside the human quarters, Captain Elise Ward stood before her small team. Her uniform was spotless, her voice calm. Around her sat 6 soldiers, tired, bruised, but ready. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. She glanced at each of them. "The council believes yesterday was a show," she said. "Today they'll push harder. He'll bring his strongest." Her second-in-command, Sergeant Mason Hale, cracked a faint smile. "Let him," he said. "The more they push, the more they learn." Elise's lips twitched slightly. "Exactly. Remember, we're not just fighting for victory. We're teaching." She looked out the narrow window toward the massive arena beyond, where thousands of alien spectators had already gathered. Drones buzzed in the air like silver insects. The energy was thick, part curiosity, part fear. When the horn sounded, the humans walked into the arena once more. Same number, same calm steps, same unshaken eyes. Opposite them stood Lord Vorak. His armor darker today, lined with pulsing crimson veins of light. Behind him stood 12 soldiers, twice as many as before, each carrying energy blades and heavy gauntlets glowing with plasma. Vorak raised his voice so the crowd could hear. "Yesterday you survived because we underestimated you. Today you will face truth." He turned to the council and bowed slightly. "With your permission, I will lead the battle myself." A wave of approval rolled through the audience. Some cheered for his courage. Others whispered that it was foolish to face the humans personally. Elise didn't move. She only tilted her head. "If this is what you wish, Lord Vorak." Her tone was steady, polite, but sharp like a blade. The gong struck. The aliens charged, their weapons leaving trails of light across the dark arena floor. This time, the humans didn't dodge immediately. They waited. They measured every movement, every angle. Then, like shadows coming alive, they struck back. Clean, silent, and terrifyingly precise. Mason ducked under a blade, kicked out a leg, and sent a warrior sprawling. Lieutenant Ava spun, grabbing a plasma gauntlet mid-swing, using it to blast another attacker backward. The air filled with the sound of impact. Quick, sharp, final. Elise didn't draw any weapon. She simply moved, flowing between enemies, reading them as if she could see half a second into the future. Her boots slid across the stone, her hands guiding, redirecting, striking. The crowd went silent again. This wasn't brute force. This wasn't alien technology. It was discipline. It was instinct honed over thousands of years of survival. Vorak growled as one of his soldiers fell beside him. He swung his energy blade with enough force to melt steel, but Elise stepped aside just in time, the edge grazing her sleeve. She caught his wrist and twisted sharply. The weapon clattered to the ground. Vorak's eyes widened. He didn't understand how something so small could move with such power. He tried again, roaring, charging with his claws. Elise ducked, pressed her hand to his chest armor, and struck. The hit didn't even dent the metal, but it made him stumble back 2 steps, gasping for air. How? He hissed. Leverage, Elise said quietly. Lesson 1. Never mistake size for control. The alien crowd murmured. This time there was no laughter, only silence broken by the hum of the arena shields. From the high seats, the Counselor of Valeth leaned forward, whispering to another delegate. These humans, they fight like they've seen death too many times. The other delegate nodded slowly. Perhaps they have. Vorak's soldiers began to fall faster. 2 humans moved together, working as one unit, one blocking, one striking. Another used the shattered fragments of armor as traps. Their movements weren't just skill, they were memory. Elise called out orders, not loud but clear. Left flank. Focus on movement, not power. Target armor seams. Use the angles. Each soldier responded instantly. Their discipline stunned even the Council's military leaders. Within minutes, only Vorak remained standing. His armor cracked. His pride bleeding through every breath. He fell to one knee, glaring up at Elise. You think this proves anything? You think pain makes you powerful? Elise stared down at him. Pain doesn't make us powerful. It teaches us to stand up again. She turned to the watching council. You wanted to see what Earth taught us. We learned to survive the impossible. We learned to fight wars not because we wanted to, but because we had no choice. The silence deepened. Even Vorak's soldiers, defeated and groaning, listened. Elise continued softly. Every human standing here has lost someone. Every one of us has fought not for glory, but for the right to live another day. You call us violent, but you've never seen what happens when survival requires violence. For the first time, Vorak said nothing. His claws trembled as he stood. There was no more arrogance in his eyes, only confusion. He looked at her, trying to understand. What kind of species learns fear and calls it a lesson? Elise's eyes softened, but her voice was like steel. The kind that has faced extinction and still chose to live. When the humans walked out of the arena, no one dared to laugh. No one clapped. The silence was heavier than any applause. The alien crowd stared after them, realizing that humanity's lesson wasn't about fighting. It was about something deeper, something older than the stars themselves. Vorak stood alone, the dust rising around him. He had asked for a demonstration, and humanity had just begun to show what they were capable of. The great hall of the Galactic Council was silent. No one spoke. No one dared. The footage of the second demonstration played again on the grand holographic screen. Slow motion, frame by frame. 6 humans, unarmored and calm, standing over a dozen of the Dominion's finest soldiers. Every alien leader watched closely. Every movement, every strike, every look in those human eyes. Cold, disciplined, and merciless. For the first time in the Council's long history, no one mocked Earth. But Lord Vorak did not speak. He sat in the shadows of the chamber, his claws gripping the edge of the metal bench. He replayed one moment over and over in his mind. The instant Elise Ward's hand pressed against his chest. The force of her calm, her quiet control. He had faced warlords who commanded fleets of planets. He had faced creatures twice his size, armored in plasma. Yet none had ever made him feel what he felt in that moment. Fear. He couldn't explain it. But he knew it was real. The Council demanded one final display. Not combat this time, but an explanation. Human representative, said the Counselor of Valeth, her silver eyes narrowing. You have shown us your skill. Now tell us, where did you learn this? What shaped you into this? Paradox. Elise stood once again in the center of the chamber, the humans behind her like silent shadows. Her hands were clasped behind her back. You want to know what Earth taught us, she said softly. Then listen. The chamber dimmed as holograms appeared, scenes from Earth's long history. The first image, primitive humans, hunters with spears, facing beasts 10 times their size. They fought together, not for power, but because alone they would die. From the beginning, Elise said, we learned that survival is not a gift. It is a battle we fight every day. We fought the cold, the hunger, and the dark. We fought each other, and every time we broke, we rebuilt. The second image, cities burning. Wars that covered continents. The sky filled with fire. Tanks rolled through rubble. Soldiers carried wounded comrades through smoke. Some say humanity is violent, Elise continued. They're right. But they never ask why. She turned slowly, her gaze sweeping across the alien council. We fight because peace was never given to us. We had to earn it. We had to bleed for it. Vorak shifted in his seat, uneasy. The images of war, destruction, and chaos burned across the chamber. Yet beneath the ruin, something else was visible. In every image, humans helped each other. Even in flames, they carried the wounded. Even in loss, they shared food, comfort, hope. The third image, astronauts. The first humans stepping on the moon. The first ships leaving Earth. The first colony built under alien stars. When we looked up at the night sky, Elise said, her voice softening, we didn't see danger. We saw a challenge. We saw possibility. The crowd watched in silence as human explorers walked on new worlds. Thin suits, heavy breathing, smiles despite the odds. Every lesson on Earth, Elise said, was written in struggle. We learned through loss, through failure, through the kind of pain that would have destroyed lesser worlds. But each time we rose again. That is our way. Vorak finally stood, his voice breaking through the silence. You glorify your suffering, he said. You wear it like armor. But suffering is weakness. Elise turned her head toward him. No, she said quietly. Suffering is truth. It reminds us what we stand to lose. It teaches us compassion. And the strength to fight when no one else will. She stepped closer to the hologram, her reflection shining beside a scene of a burned battlefield. When the skies fell, we rebuilt our cities. When the oceans rose, we adapted. When empires tried to erase us, we endured. Every scar on our world is a lesson written in fire, pain, and hope. The counselors murmured among themselves. Vorak's expression darkened. He wanted to mock her, to challenge her words, but he couldn't. The air around Elise felt heavy, not with pride, but with something deeper, older. It was as if humanity carried the memory of every tragedy and turned it into power. Perhaps you don't understand, Elise said at last. We don't fight because we want to dominate. We fight because we remember what happens when we don't. The hologram changed again. Now it showed images of Earth uniting, nations coming together, people rebuilding, soldiers laying down weapons to help rebuild cities, children planting trees over battlefields. This is the final lesson, Elise said. We learned that mercy is strength too, but never mistake it for weakness. Her eyes turned toward Vorak, cold and steady. You mocked humanity's lessons. But what you saw in that arena, that was mercy. You saw what we chose to hold back. The entire chamber went still. Vorak stared at her in disbelief. You held back? Elise nodded once. You asked for a demonstration, not a war. The words sank deep into the crowd like thunder. Across the chamber, dozens of alien leaders exchanged glances. For the first time, they realized the humans had not shown their full strength, that the arena had been a warning, not a victory. Elise stepped back, her voice calm but heavy with finality. Every lesson Earth taught us was paid for in blood. We remember those lessons every time we fight, not to win but to survive. And survival is the one language all life understands. Lord Vorak sat down again, his mind spinning. He had mocked Earth, called them primitive, savage. Yet now he saw something terrifying. Not monsters, but survivors. Beings who had walked through hell for centuries and learned to smile at the fire. As Elise turned to leave, Vorak's voice was low, uncertain. What are you, really? She paused, looked over her shoulder and said quietly, students of pain, teachers of fear. Then she walked out, her boots echoing through the vast, silent hall. The council didn't move for a long time. Every race in that chamber knew humanity's lessons weren't just stories. They were warnings. The night over Zorath Prime was heavy and cold. The golden towers of the council city shimmered in silence, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. Inside one of those towers, Lord Vorak sat alone. The battle recordings from the arena replayed before him, again and again. He watched Captain Elise Ward's face frozen in mid-motion, calm and precise, her eyes sharp as a blade. No rage, no pride, only focus. He paused the video, zooming in on her expression. This is not strength, he muttered. This is something else. For the first time in his life, Vorak, conqueror of 5 systems, commander of the Dominion's armies, could not define what he felt. It wasn't defeat. It wasn't humiliation. It was doubt. He hated that feeling more than pain itself. Across the city, Elise stood before the massive glass window of the human quarters. Below her, the alien lights shimmered in neat, perfect order. Civilizations that had never known what it meant to lose everything. Sergeant Mason Hale approached quietly. "You should rest, Captain. We may be called again tomorrow." She nodded, though her eyes didn't move. "I know. They're afraid now," Mason said. "Even Vorak. You saw his face?" Elise smiled faintly, a sad kind of smile. Fear was never the goal. Understanding was, he frowned. "You think he'll understand?" She turned toward him. "Not yet. The proud never listen until they're broken." The following morning, the council chamber was crowded again. The tension was thick. The air almost electric. Vorak stood in the center, his armor gleaming dark red. This time he wasn't here to observe. He was here to fight. "Counselors," he said in a low, booming tone, "I request one final test. Me against the human captain. No soldiers. No excuses." Gasps echoed through the room. The Valith counselor leaned forward. "You wish to duel her?" "Yes," Vorak growled. "If she is the face of Earth's strength, I will face her myself." All eyes turned to Elise. She stood silently at the edge of the room, her posture straight, her gaze steady. "You want to face me?" she asked. "I will prove that your so-called lessons are nothing but tricks and luck." Elise studied him for a moment, then nodded once. "Very well. But remember, Lord Vorak, you asked for this." The arena shimmered to life one last time. The stands overflowed with spectators from dozens of worlds. Every species, every leader, every warrior waited to see the outcome. The ground was marked with bright white symbols, the duel of equals. A sacred combat that allowed no armor advantage, no energy fields, no technology. Only skill. Elise stepped into the circle unarmed. Vorak followed, towering above her, his muscles coiled tight beneath his simple black combat suit. The gong sounded. For a long moment, neither moved. Vorak was first. He lunged forward, his claws slicing through the air. Elise sidestepped with the calmness of a whisper, her movements almost too smooth for the eye to follow. The sound of impact, her elbow met his ribs. The alien commander staggered, surprised by the sudden pain. He turned fast, swinging again, but she was gone, sliding low, striking his knee joint, forcing him to stumble. The crowd murmured in disbelief. Vorak roared and slammed his fists together, sending a shockwave that cracked the arena floor. Elise was thrown backward but rolled gracefully to her feet. Dust fell around her, but her eyes never left him. "You're strong," she said. "But strength is only half the fight," he bared his teeth. "And what's the other half, human?" She moved again, faster this time, using his size against him, redirecting every swing, every strike. She was not fighting him with rage, but with control, the kind that comes only from years of surviving worse. "The other half," she said between movements, "is the will to endure pain." Vorak swung wildly now, furious, desperate to land a hit. One strike grazed her shoulder, a shallow cut, but blood bloomed red against her dark sleeve. The sight made the crowd gasp, but Elise didn't flinch. She looked down at the wound, then at him. "Lesson 2, she said quietly. "Pain is not the end. It's information." She moved again, faster than before. 2 quick strikes, one to his arm, one to his chest. The air left his lungs in a rush. Vorak dropped to one knee, breathing hard. The arena was dead silent except for the sound of his ragged gasps. Elise stopped in front of him, her expression calm but cold. "You've been taught to fear pain," she said. "We were taught to live with it." The alien crowd leaned forward, unable to look away. Even the counselors, beings who had lived for centuries, felt something shift. An understanding that this duel was not just about strength, but about truth. Elise spoke again, her voice echoing through the arena. "You thought Earth's strength came from violence. You were wrong. It came from our weakness. From every loss we turned into a lesson. From every failure we refused to forget." Vorak stared up at her, confusion and anger mixing in his eyes. What kind of creature finds power in suffering? Elise's voice softened. the kind that has nothing else left. For a long moment, no one moved. The air was thick with silence. Elise extended her hand, not to strike, but to help him stand. Vorak hesitated. Then slowly he took it, as she pulled him up. She whispered so only he could hear, "Now you've learned what Earth teaches best, humility." He looked at her, breathing heavily, and for the first time, he didn't feel anger. He felt respect. When the duel ended, there was no cheer. No applause, only quiet awe. The counselors stood as one, bowing their heads slightly toward Elise. Even the proud warriors of distant empires lowered their eyes. Lord Vorak bowed too, not because he was forced to, but because he understood now the turning point had come. Humanity had proven their power was not just in muscle or machines, but in endurance, discipline, and spirit. From that moment, no one in the galaxy would ever call Earth weak again. The duel had ended, but its echo still lingered through the halls of the Galactic Council. Silence followed Elise Ward and her team wherever they walked. No one laughed at them now. No one whispered primitive or backward. Every alien who had witnessed that duel carried the same image. A small, calm human standing over a commander twice her size, offering him a hand instead of a blade. That gesture, more than the victory, had shaken the galaxy. In the Grand Chamber, the council gathered again. The air felt heavy, almost sacred. Lord Vorak stood in the center, his head slightly bowed. His armor was cracked, his pride bruised, but his eyes were different now, not full of hate but of realization. He faced Elise, who stood silently at the edge of the room, her team behind her. The faint scar on her arm was still visible, a reminder of the duel. Vorak took a slow breath. "I demanded strength," he said. "You gave me something else?" Elise tilted her head. "A lesson?" He nodded once. "Yes, one I will not forget." The Counselor of Valeth leaned forward. "Then let the galaxy hear it. Tell us, Captain Ward, what lesson did you mean to teach us?" Elise's voice was calm, clear, every word cutting through the silence like a blade through air. "The lesson," she said, "is that humanity doesn't fight to win. We fight because we must. Because behind every human warrior is a world that refuses to die." The hologram screens lit up again. Images of Earth spinning in the void, covered in blue oceans and green continents. But this time it wasn't destruction they saw. They saw rebuilding, children playing among ruins, farmers planting seeds in the soil of battlefields, engineers constructing cities over the ashes of war. Elise spoke softly. "You see, we are not proud of our violence. We are proud of what comes after it. Every time we fall, we learn. Every time we break, we rebuild stronger. Every loss becomes a lesson." Vorak looked at the holograms, his claws curling. "You turned pain into progress," he said quietly. Elise nodded. "We had no choice." She walked forward, stopping in front of him. "You mocked humanity because you saw our history. The wars, the chaos, the destruction. You saw the surface, but you didn't see what came next. You didn't see the hands that reached out after the fire. You didn't see the rebuilding." Her voice hardened. "You saw our scars and mistook them for weakness." The chamber stayed quiet. Even the oldest counselors, beings who had watched empires rise and fall, could feel the truth in her words. Elise lifted her hand, projecting one final image into the air, a soldier kneeling beside a child sharing his rations. A doctor standing in a ruined hospital helping strangers, a mother holding her baby under a broken sky. "This," she said, "is what Earth teaches us. Not to conquer, but to care. Not to destroy, but to endure. And when someone tries to take that from us, we fight." Her eyes met Vorak's. "We fight not for power, not for pride, but because we remember the cost of losing everything." Vorak stepped closer, the echo of his claws soft against the floor. "And what of mercy, Captain? You had the power to kill me in that duel. Why didn't you?" Elise didn't blink. "Because you needed to live to understand." He froze, staring at her. "I spared you," she said quietly, "because death ends the lesson. But fear keeps it alive." The words struck harder than any weapon. Vorak's breath caught. Around him, the alien counselors shifted uneasily, their expressions dark with realization. She continued, her voice calm but cold. "Humanity learned that fear is not always an enemy. Sometimes it's a teacher. A voice that whispers, "Don't forget what pain feels like." It keeps us humble, keeps us ready. The chamber fell silent again. The Counselor of Valeth spoke softly, almost to herself. Perhaps this is why your species survived when others fell." Elise gave a faint smile. "We never stop learning. We never stop teaching." Vorak dropped to one knee, lowering his head. The gesture was ancient, the Dominion's symbol of respect to an equal. "I mocked you," he said. "I called your people savages. But now I see it is not savagery that defines you. It is resilience." He lifted his gaze, his voice steady but softer than ever before. "Tell me, Captain Ward, what happens to those who do not learn your lessons?" Elise's expression darkened. "They vanish," she said. "The universe doesn't forgive ignorance." The words echoed across the hall. Even the Council's translators seemed hesitant to break the stillness that followed. At last, the High Council rose. A decree was spoken, one that would ripple through every empire, every species, every corner of the galaxy. From this day forward, the planet Earth shall no longer be regarded as a minor world. It will be respected, and never challenged for its strength, its wisdom, and its endurance. Thunderous applause filled the hall, not of joy, but of awe. For the first time in galactic history, the smallest world had earned the respect of the stars. Elise bowed her head slightly. Lesson delivered. That night, as the humans prepared to depart, Vorak approached her once more. His voice was quiet, almost human in tone. "Captain Ward," he said, "your people are dangerous." She looked at him, calm as ever. "Only when they're underestimated." He nodded slowly. "I believe that will never happen again." As Earth's ship rose from Zorath Prime, the stars seemed brighter than before. Below, billions of eyes watched in silence, some in respect, some in fear, and some in awe. Because now they knew. The humans were not just another young species. They were something else, something unbreakable. And across the stars, one name began to spread like wildfire, whispered in fear and admiration alike. Earth, the world that teaches through pain. The galaxy did not forget that day. The duel had ended, but its echoes spread across the stars like thunder rolling through empty space. For the first time in living memory, a commander of the Zorath Dominion, Lord Vorak, heir to one of the oldest empires, had bowed his head to a human. Empires whispered. Fleets paused their drills. Even pirates and mercenaries spoke the name. Elise Ward with something that sounded very close to fear, but no one felt the weight of that day heavier than Vorak himself. He sat alone in his chamber, aboard the Dominion flagship, the Vengeance of Stars. The armor he once wore with pride lay cracked on the floor beside him. The mirror across the room showed him a face changed, the proud gleam in his eyes replaced by something unfamiliar. Humility. His second-in-command, Captain Relnar, entered quietly. "My lord," he began, "the Council has been asking for your report. They want to hear how you were defeated." Vorak did not answer. He kept his gaze on the stars beyond the window. After a long silence, he said softly, "Defeated." "Yes, but not destroyed." Relnar hesitated. "Was it their weapons? Their tactics? How did they overpower you?" Vorak's voice was cold and distant. "It wasn't their weapons. It was their will." He turned slowly, his eyes hard but thoughtful. "Humans fight like they've already died once and came back just to finish the job." Relnar frowned, confused. "You speak as if they are gods." Vorak shook his head. "No, that's the mistake we made. We thought they wanted to be gods, but they just want to survive, and that makes them unstoppable." He walked toward the shattered armor and placed a claw on the cracked chest plate. "They don't fight for pride or for conquest. They fight for memory, for the ghosts of what they've lost." Relnar fell silent. The words carried a weight no alien soldier could ignore. Meanwhile, aboard the Terran vessel Horizon, Elise stood in the observation deck, gazing at the same stars. The War Council had ended, and the Earth delegation was preparing to return home. Her crew, 6 of Earth's finest, stood behind her. "Quiet and proud, Captain," said Lieutenant Mason softly. "Do you think they'll come after us again?" Elise didn't answer right away. Her reflection in the glass looked tired but calm. "They won't," she finally said. "Not for a long time." Mason frowned. "Because they're afraid?" Elise shook her head. Because they finally understand. Back on Zorath Prime, the Dominion Council gathered in secret session. Vorak stood before them unarmed, his posture firm. The lords around him glared, their voices rising in disbelief. You let humans defeat you? One roared. They humiliated the Dominion. Another hissed. Vorak didn't flinch. They taught me. The council chamber froze. You speak like a student of prey, one elder sneered. Vorak's eyes flashed. Prey? He stepped forward. You call them prey? Then tell me, elders, why do I still see their faces when I close my eyes? He slammed his claw against the table. They are hunters, patient, quiet, and merciless when provoked. The room fell quiet. For a long moment, the only sound was the slow hum of the planetary shields outside. Then Vorak spoke again, his tone lower. I mocked them. I called them savages. I told them to show me what Earth taught them. He paused, his voice trembling slightly. They showed me. What did they show you, Vorak? An old counselor asked, curiosity replacing anger. Vorak turned his gaze upward, eyes distant. They showed me that mercy is not weakness, that pain is not defeat, that fear can be a teacher. They showed me that survival itself is their greatest weapon. The council sat in uneasy silence. At last, the eldest among them leaned forward. Then what do you suggest? Vorak's voice was calm. We leave Earth alone forever, no invasion, no interference, no provocation. A murmur ran through the chamber. That would make us look weak, another lord said sharply. Vorak's gaze cut to him. Weak? No, it will make us wise. He turned away from them and faced the great galactic map on the wall. June's small blue dot marked Earth. He stared at it for a long time, then he whispered, They are not to be conquered. They are to be respected and feared. Far away on Earth, news of the Council's decision reached the Terran Federation. The message was short and formal. The Zorath Dominion withdraws all operations near Sol. Earth's sovereignty will be respected indefinitely. When the message ended, silence filled the Federation command room. Then quiet applause broke out, not of celebration, but of pride. Elise listened from her post aboard the Horizon. She didn't smile. She only whispered, Fear can protect just as much as power. Her second officer turned. So what happens now? She looked at the stars. Now? We prepare for when they forget. Months passed. Across the galaxy, new stories spread. Stories told by traders, travelers, and soldiers who had heard the tale of the human captain who defeated a Dominion lord. They called her the teacher of fear. They called her people the children of endurance. And whenever another empire mocked the name of Earth, someone always whispered, Don't. Remember what happened to Vorak. Vorak himself carried the memory wherever he went. At night, when the stars were silent and his ship drifted through the void, he could still hear Elise's voice echo in his mind. I spared you because death ends the lesson. But fear keeps it alive. He understood it now. Fear was not just a punishment, it was a reminder. And every time he felt it, he remembered the human who taught him. One evening, he stood at the viewport, watching Earth's system from a distance. He spoke softly, almost respectfully. You have my fear, humans. But you also have my respect. He turned away, his armor polished anew, the scars of his defeat still visible. Not as shame, but as symbols of wisdom. From that day forward, Vorak banned any attack on Earth. He made it law across the Dominion. No fleet shall touch the blue world. For where they stand, even gods would bleed. And so, in the endless halls of the galaxy's memory, the story became legend. The tale of a proud commander who mocked a small world and learned to fear it forever. Time moved on, but legends never die. The story of what happened on Zorath Prime had already crossed star systems, traveling faster than light through whispers, stories, and fear. Everywhere the tale was told, the message remained the same. He mocked humanity's lessons and learned fear the hard way. No matter the world, no matter the tongue, the words carried the same warning. On the distant moon of Kareth IV, alien cadets trained for battle. One of them, young and proud, laughed as he read an old report. Humans? He scoffed. They're soft creatures. Too emotional. The old instructor beside him turned slowly, his scarred face pale under the starlight. Then you've never seen one fight, he said quietly. The cadet frowned. You speak as if you faced them. The instructor's gaze drifted upward. I haven't faced them, but I saw what they did to the Dominion Lord Vorak. The man who mocked them, he paused, his voice trembling. He knelt before one. The cadet froze. The room went silent, and once again, across another generation, the lesson was passed. Back on Earth, Captain Elise Ward stood at the edge of the Terran command balcony, overlooking the shining curve of the planet below. Night covered the half of Earth she could see, a dark ocean dotted with city lights. Behind her, the soft hum of engines from the fleet echoed like a heartbeat. Humanity had grown stronger, but calmer too. The wars of the past were gone. In their place stood understanding and readiness. Lieutenant Mason approached quietly. Captain, reports are in. The Dominion's fleets have stayed clear of our borders for an entire standard year. Elise nodded slightly. Good. Fear lasts longer than treaties. Mason smiled faintly. So the lesson worked. Elise's eyes softened as she gazed out into the stars. It wasn't about the lesson, Mason. It was about memory. They finally remember what we've been through. That's what keeps them away. Inside the Galactic Archives, a historian from the Valeth Alliance recorded the events of the duel for future generations. His notes read, "Humanity is not the strongest nor the most advanced, but they are the most enduring. They treat pain as a teacher, death as a lesson, and survival as an art. Empires fear their weapons, but they should fear their hearts more." That entry would later be known as the Human Doctrine, a text studied in alien academies to this day. Meanwhile, far away in the Dominion capital, Vorak, now older, his fur streaked with silver, sat in quiet reflection. His days of command were over. The council had given him a new title, the Keeper of Lessons. He spent his remaining years teaching young officers what he had learned from humanity. One cadet once asked him, "Lord Vorak, how can fear be a lesson?" Vorak's eyes glowed faintly as he looked toward the holographic projection of Earth. Because fear shows us what we value most. Humanity fears extinction, so they built strength. They fear forgetting, so they built memory. And they fear repeating their past, so they built peace. The cadet tilted his head. "And what do you fear, my lord?" Vorak smiled weakly. "I fear the day they stop learning. Because when humans stop learning, the stars themselves will burn." Back on Earth years later, Elise Ward retired quietly to a small home near the coastline of New Avalon City. The waves crashed against the shore, echoing the rhythm of her memories. She often walked alone under the night sky, the stars bright and endless above her. Sometimes she could almost feel them watching back. The same stars that had once watched her duel, that had carried her name across galaxies. One evening, a young journalist found her sitting by the sea. "Captain Ward," he asked shyly, "is it true that you made Lord Vorak kneel?" She smiled gently, shaking her head. "No, I didn't make him kneel. He chose to." The boy frowned, confused. "Why would an alien warlord do that?" Elise looked up at the stars, her eyes reflecting their light. "Because he finally understood what humanity fights for. Not power, not revenge, but survival. And hope." When she died many years later, fleets from across the galaxy sent signals of mourning, a rare act of respect. Even the Dominion sent a message carved in pure crystal, placed beside her memorial. It read, "To the one who taught us fear, and through it, wisdom." Decades passed. New wars came, new peace treaties formed, new species rose to power. But one phrase endured, carved into the walls of military academies, whispered in strategy rooms, printed on the badges of explorers who traveled beyond known space: never underestimate Earth. And sometimes, when new alien commanders grew arrogant and mocked humanity, someone would always respond with a quiet warning. Don't repeat Vorak's mistake. Remember what they say. The humans don't fight to win. They fight because they must. Then silence would follow. The same silence that once filled the Galactic Council when Elise Ward stood tall and taught a galaxy its greatest lesson. Out there, among the endless stars, the legend still burns. Bright, fierce, eternal. It is said that even now, when the wind passes through the metallic ruins of forgotten worlds, it carries a whisper. Show me what Earth taught you. And somewhere in that whisper another voice answers. Calm, fearless, proud. Everything.